Aaron, can you hear me? Aaron, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so I want you to know that you're recording and streaming.
People to it. I thought that was
Okay.
gross.
Thank you very much.
No, any administration. Yeah, exactly. We just changed it on our ski team because we had it as a just family rate, no matter how many kids you had. And we were like, what if someone comes in with a family?
Yeah.
So we had to change it to like 4 and then each kid is an additional.
Yeah, that's
So
so
much. Yeah.
I know.
I can, I'll be right back. Yeah. I will grab a pen too.
So we're on, we're streaming.
Oh, Charlie.
We'll start the music. We'll start the meeting here in just a second.
There's Katie.
I thought I
Almost all here.
thought it was gonna be Kevin. No one.
There's someone sitting, Brian's sitting here.
Yeah.
But down there's
Great rain from here. Let me go paint some.
Are you back on the thing? Or did you never leave? Kevin was here last time, right?
Oh, it was just, I couldn't be here.
Okay, I thought he was like taking over this one as one of his.
We haven't made appointments yet, so, or reassigned yet, so,
Thank you.
yeah.
How's your oak?
Pardon?
How's your oak?
Oh, it's much better, thank you.
Is there a long, what's the word, like, fiction time or? for that?
Most normal people do not have the same experience that I've had, according to my doctor and my own previous experience, actually.
Yeah,
I never used to get like recurring spots for weeks.
Hey, so I want to remind you that we are recording and are streaming.
You all ready? Okay. I was just gonna ask.
Megan
Lynn,
She is here.
Does anybody need an agenda?
I'll take it.
yeah, I'll take one too.
Okay.
I feel like I didn't
Let's
get
back
an email
to
for this one.
You can move it to, it's you there. Or did you want to know?
Sure.
All right.
There's-
Yeah,
I think
figure it
now-
out.
Here, I'll just-
So just gonna-
Can everybody hear and see us online? Yes. that's-
Yes.
Okay. All right. I will get this meeting started at 6:05 and we'll just do introductions. I'm Shannon Knight. I am the chair.
Vicki Olson, Vice Chair.
Mary Baumgartner, City Council Liaison.
Megan Big John, staff.
Aaron Goodell, staff.
Tanner Woody, citizen member.
And then we have Bo and Charlie and Holly online. So just, you guys want to just say hi? I said
Hi.
This is Holly, citizen member.
Charlie Anderson, citizen member, I guess we say.
Would you know the same?
All right. So we have approval of the meeting notes. Did everyone have a chance to look those over? Did briefly. See.
Yes.
Someone
No
want to make a
comments.
motion to approve?
I don't know.
Motion to approve the approval of the meeting notes for what, January 27th and March 20, February 27th and March 26th.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, or Charlie seconded. All in favor, just raise your hand. It's like anybody. And opposed, okay. So the minutes are done. And so are you?
Sure,
ready?
I can start. No, we can get started. He's gonna be in here just a minute and we'll get going at least to get you started. I can just do a little bit of introduction while Aaron's getting this on. My name is Megan Bigjohn. I'm the new Parks and Recreation Director. I'm new since October, mid-October, so I still got to use the word new, I think, for a few more months until I hit my year. I came from the city of Lake Oswego and was there for 14 years in Parks and Recreation. And so it was really exciting to get this opportunity to come here and apply what I learned and then come and learn how a different city operates. I also live here in West Linn, so I'm pretty honored to be serving my own community. The Community Recreation Center was a project that was started by my predecessor. So when I came in October, they were finalizing the first initial phases of the community outreach to gain this information of what the community is looking for. And so I've been kind of following it through since that point on. So this all started with, there's of course the original initiative that started in 2013 with Community and Aquatic Bond that went out, that started off as everyone was all here, but from my knowledge, it started off mostly as a citizen initiative. City got on board and went through that process. Part that's kind of interesting, if it would have passed then, it would have been a lot cheaper to have the pool and the community center together as cost of it. It had increased quite a bit since then. In 2019, the department did their update to the Parks and Recreation plan, and it did update the priority for this community center. And so that's where we're at. And then in this last year, council put it adopted as a goal. And the goal wasn't to build it, it was to find out what the community interest was there to be able to support it. And if it was going to be what was really overall desired. They looked at, so that's what we've been doing, right? This is Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience.
I just got started.
All right.
So actually, if you want, just so that we have the record.
Yep.
You want to.
My name is Ryan Matau. I'm a project manager with Emma Morris, Fond Ultimate MIG. We're doing a variety of projects in West Linn, but I've been involved in going back as far as your park and recreation and trails plan and working through the 2 phases of this feasibility study. So.
Okay. And then also for the record, Gary will walked in during that too.
Right.
Gary, so.
And then click some from the planning commission.
Oh, perfect. All right, go on.
So thank you all for having me
I
also.
started.
And yeah, so I can either pick up and,
No,
and
you
go
go
from here.
ahead,
Yeah,
seriously, and I'll
Yeah.
jump in as we go through.
excellent. So as long as this is picking up.
Oh yeah, the mouse is the tricky part with the.
Excellent. Thank you again for patience getting this going. Is this the one that I emailed?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Yep,
I
this
just want
is
to make
it.
sure that I had the updated version. So basically, we took that goal that City Council set about exploring this park community recreation center and really started structuring at the request at the time at Ken Warner's request, structuring a project to methodically work through with the community about what they wanted to see. And the kind of messaging that we started with was really, when we say the words community recreation center, everybody comes up with an idea that is completely different from everybody else's idea because of their experiences in their past. And so that objective in phase 1 really was about building that shared understanding, building something that people could react to, but also something that was real enough that we could get to a cost. At first, a real rough cost based on just the kinds of spaces that might be included, and then later more detailed costs, which we'll get into. So just going to run through really quick. We finished that phase 1 in December, and this was the list of activities. It was mostly on the community engagement side, because really at that point, what we were trying to do was to ask everybody who would listen, who we could talk to about what kinds of activities are you thinking about when you think about a community recreation center? What kinds of activities are most important to West Linn? And so we talked with your city council in small meetings. We talked with other groups, kind of more one-on-one. We established a steering committee that we're still working with. We had 2 online and an in-person town hall meetings. We had an online questionnaire that had over 1,800 respondents, which we're really proud of. We actually just kind of squeaked over the line of the Parks and Recreation questionnaire that we had also done. We started building a contact list, and we've continued doing that throughout the process. It's now, and we'll report that later on in here too, it's at over 600 individuals deduplicated the whole thing. We've been just kind of every event, every outreach, we're kind of like, sign up for more updates, sign up for more updates. And the results of that is really what we call the space program, the building program, and some initial costs on that. And then in December, basically having completed the first phase of what we'd suggested, we came to City Council right as Megan was coming on board with an ask of, did we hear enough that you want to continue? So again, methodical, checking in, really building up the understanding both in the community and with your decision makers. And they said, yes, what we've heard so far is sufficient that we want to keep moving forward. And I have a few details in here about what we heard. You're going to keep hearing some of these things because we kind of just kept getting a lot of reinforcement on a lot of them, maximizing flexibility, making sure that the operational sustainability is there, looking for partnerships. One of the first ones that seemed really obvious to everybody was the school district. We made sure to reach out to them right up early in the process and see, is there any initial interest there? The answer was basically no. And not because they don't like the idea, but because their message was basically, we build the facilities that we need, and we don't need this facility. We might be a small time user of this facility, but that's not like we're going to build a gym to be part of this project. Those town hall meetings online, we tried to summarize those up in really understandable ways, but the gist of it really was providing easy interactions for people to give us the answer to what kinds of spaces are important. And we had a lot of involved conversation, even right up front, about what is this thing going to be? What is it going to look like? How are we going to pay for it? All of these questions that we weren't answering at this stage. And we were trying to carry those forward and trying to be really straightforward and really honest about all of the realities of this, which are including up to and including, we've said to your city council a number of times, there is a legitimate answer here that is no, we're not going to move forward with this. And we were leaving that door open throughout the process and trying to be as transparent as possible about all of the decision making that was happening throughout the
Can I ask one thing? If you remember, if you must go back to the infographic, just to make sure you guys know, as you see the large word there, pool, that we have repeatedly heard pool as something of interest for long-term for us to have. As part of this project, we've been asked to have phase one not include the pools, purely just because of the cost and what it takes to run those. So we've always shown that that is a part of it. So just when you see that, we're definitely, for those who are pool supporters, we're not ignoring it, it's there.
But I
I don't
also love to
think
point
no
out,
pool.
yeah, I was going to say, I was
No
also
pool,
gonna
yeah.
point out too, is that,
There's
it's,
a lot of aquatic centers in there. You see that?
yeah, there's,
That's where- I just wanted to call that out because I don't want anybody to feel like this, our goal is to get whatever we're told in here and make sure we send that back out to council. So I just didn't want that to be skipped over. We talked so
yeah,
many
and we
times.
do touch on that in a number of other
Yeah.
places too. One of the key messages in the current phase of work really is that this facility without a pool is the first step to a facility with a pool. So yeah, really the top needs in this first open house meeting, which was the online one, were about that multi-use sports court. The people who came to that meeting seemed very aware, which not everybody was, that while there are gyms in the schools and other places, that they're booked to the gills, basically. And so, and then the second tier, really, it's two different things, was aquatics and social gathering space. Those tied in this little boat, but that was one activity. We've heard that message again kind of throughout. Like, these are things that keep coming up, that social space that's not about active recreation, that the gym space specifically, and then the pool. Not necessarily that.
It just occurred to me because actually someone asked me or suggested, as if maybe kind of thinking, well, maybe we hadn't thought of this, that we could just be using the schools instead of building this. So it made me think that maybe community members aren't quite aware of the scheduling. Is there a way to maybe have actually a graphic in one of our presentations?
Maybe I can speak to that.
That people can see, here's the schedule, or, maybe list the availability. That would be a shorter list.
Yeah, so I think it's something to figure out how to explain that message, because if you've been along for the process, you'll know the reason why. But for example, I use our Mini Hoopers as a program that we support. That's a program ran by our city, right? And we do all the reserving through the school district of all the gym spaces that we have that we can get. It's very limited. That's why we only have a small, youth programs as far as to the middle age and older youth. But what ends up happening is we can get a call today, earlier in the day, to say that school needs the gym tomorrow, and we have to call and cancel Mini Hoopers because they have that need as well. So trying to be able to articulate that in a graph, I don't know. I need to figure out how, because it's not necessarily, I don't want it to look bad on the school. If their school has a need that circumvents our programming, they take precedence over.
I mean, maybe even a pie chart.
No, I was trying to think
Have
of
to
what
be
that
like
would be.
exact, but like you could, representative.
Yeah, it's like the available hours at yeah.
Yeah, and then a web would be, bumpable hours,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see what's possible because it starts with their programming first, so every season is different, so it's not a.
well, it doesn't
No,
have
but
to
no,
be
I just-
exact.
I'm not saying, no, Mary, I wasn't saying not to, I was just trying to explain the complexity to everybody in the room.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how, but I think it's a really good idea to be able to understand that the gyms, we would be using the gyms all the time if we could, we're only able to use it for a short amount of
I
time.
think people who aren't involved in
Yeah.
scheduling don't
100%.
realize
I think that
how
that
the
is.
schools aren't
I
available.
agree.
I think that is one of the key messages. I would say that one of the other ones, like I was saying earlier, is if you want to get to a pool or an aquatic center, like this is the stepping stone to that. That's another key message. That's started to get heard. We definitely, in our open house that we just had last week, we started hearing people repeating that back from the community, like hearing that, like, oh, I get it. It's like a huge cost add-on and we could do it later. Those kinds of things are starting to come through with people, but I think you're right. I would also echo Megan's, from years of Parks and Recreation planning experience, one of the hardest things to quantify, it's a notoriously slippery subject, is capacity and need around fields and gyms, because it depends on your policies. It depends on the sport, it depends on the season, it depends on all of these things that are very, like, it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. And it's like, but as soon as somebody starts poking out, they're like, it doesn't reflect what the reality is on the ground or something.
I mean, I coached in the high school system
Mhm.
and I started in Southern California and we never, like, I coached cheerleading, so we never had a problem because we could always practice outside. But then when I got to Oregon,
A little
I
different.
realized that you can't just practice outside, so we had to, go through schedule. And we would have practice at like 8 o'clock at night because that's the only time that we could get into the gym because all the other sports had
We've been
priority
hearing,
over.
we've been hearing that
stadium.
about middle school basketball or whatever, that it's the middle school kids that are out there at 9 PM because that's the only gym time they can get, or whatever.
So just, clarity, quick binary answers would be great. So the high school gym is available to the general public?
No.
Generally speaking, and
So
I
what
won't-
gym are we talking about?
we're talking about the gyms in the middle schools, basically.
And those are available to the general
They
public?
can be reserved. They will be reserved on a tiered system that Megan was just starting to go through. That's like, first, the school district programs would get first priority. Second priority generally is the city's recreation programs. The third would be private sports clubs. And then beyond that would be the general public. So it is technically possible and in practicality impossible.
Okay, so are we saying that there would be then overflow to the Tanner Creek area?
So I think when you say open to the public, I think that's different. That'd be like you reserving a gym. So from the city, we can reserve any of their facilities if they're available to us. We pay a fee for those use. And
Can
then
I go use the gym?
you'd have to ask the school district,
You would have to get a permit.
Okay.
from the school district to use
But
the.
but the city runs like open gym
Yeah.
type thing. So like I live right across the street from the elementary school from Willamette. And that is, they have open gym there with like basketball and
Volleyball.
football or
And volleyball, we do
volleyball.
classes.
So they're open gyms, so you can just go in as a member of the public and join in on a game at that. at
But the
that time.
city has reserved that space.
But
I guess is what I'm trying to
but their
say.
cities designated times.
Okay, so we're kind of thinking about overflow from the current systems.
They would be able to have
Right
more
now, is that kind of the
programming.
idea?
We would have a 2 gym space that we can program specifically for city programming and not have to, we'd still use those gyms, but it gives us that flow and that control. We can hold the whole program within that space. So
I
it's
think
additional.
the reason why I brought this up is because community members are coming to the open house with this preconceived idea, some of them from actual personal experience 20, 30 years ago, that they were involved in a program that was being run by them at the schools. Totally different time and reality.
Sure.
It's not possible anymore, but this person I was actually talking to was saying to me, why are we building this multi-million-dollar facility if we can just do what I used to do, is run these programs out of all the schools?
Okay,
So that's what I'm saying, is if we
Got
had a graphic, to make a short story really long, if we had a, I get it, it's a complicated graphic, but that was what I was saying, is have something people can see the reality of, no, we can't use the schools and here's why. without having to do all of this
It
discussion.
might just have to be a stated like a message, yeah, to be able to explain it.
Or just address
Mhm.
the question.
I think exactly, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't really sure, I guess, this why, like that, where the correlation was.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of it would be that was one of the big spaces, and to be frank, it's a big space and it's one of the most costly spaces that we started talking about here. So we wanted to be sure that we were clear on, you know, the why, what the need is in the community, and that was something that the Parks and Recreation Plan talked about a lot, and it was one of the reasons why that exploration that led to the city council goal was, you know, was put forward as a high priority, was because there was a need there and there was a community desire there at that point, and that has just.
That might have the justification simply written. I just read that.
Yeah, and
It just might be written.
there's a lot of people I noticed that are from this demographic age-wise who their reality was, oh, the city or, you
They're
know,
remembering.
community members ran
100%.
programs.
Yeah.
Why are we building this? So that's what I'm saying.
That's a great, no, it's a great point. And Steve's by us talking about it, all of you get educated too, and that's what I think is pretty cool about. Again, this is another community outreach point.
So just kind of, again, walking through, this is still phase one, the online questionnaire, 243 respondents, nearly all of them indicated they were homeowners. We actually had a pretty similar age, even though it's a small percentage, this is actually very similar to the percentage age-wise in the demographic here in West Linn that is over retirement age. So we feel like we got a pretty good spread. We did recognize that households with children are a little overrepresented. We asked people that specifically, and that was in response to what we heard earlier in the process. So we're trying to build, each step of the way, we're trying to build on what we've already learned, and then ask targeted questions to make sure we understand if we're reaching new people, the same people, you know, people in a broader demographic category, for example. And that questionnaire, what it did was it walked people through a lot of possibilities. And another one of those things that we built on was, we heard in those open houses, it'd be really good to be able to see some of the possibilities, either list them out, show us some pictures. And this online questionnaire gave us a really unique opportunity to do that. We did it in 2 stages. The first was we asked by category. So we'd ask about, you know, indoor fitness classes, you know, such as, you know, click all the ones that you're interested in, yoga, dance, whatever. And they got to do that by category. They could check all of them that applied. Then at the very end of the survey, we took each of those categories and we asked people to say which 3 of those categories are the most important to you. So we asked them to get a little bit of that prioritization in there as well. And so what we saw across those results was we had 1,000 respondents indicate, so this was like the cream of the crop of that process, indicate this set of 8 or so, I think it was 8, 8 or so activities. And what we did was we used that set of activities to build our initial kind of community desired building program. So that's not a scientific process, that is a community engagement process. And I am a community engagement expert, and I will go to that over and over again, that it's not necessarily science, it's a kind of science, but it's not necessarily like the kind of science that people think about when they talk about surveys. But what we are doing is a methodical process to refine what we understand in the community and to hear from as many people as we can. So this was our initial community desired building program, which we were then able to follow up with some design expertise on as well. But just to kind of a final test, and this was asked in a number of different ways by our earlier process, is this still a priority for the community? Like, aren't there other things that were still important? And we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, is a community recreation center still a priority for West Linn? This was prefaced by, this has been a goal, this has been an outcome of the Parks and Rec plan. We know that it has been in the past a priority. Is it still? So what you're seeing here is this line is neutral. This is negative, and this is positive. And so we broke that down, the same question, we broke it down by a few different demographics, which is quite an eye test. This one was households with children in them. This one was households that are retired or have children out of the household. And this one was retired with no children visiting or whatever else. So we had the weakest support in that group. But even in the households that no longer have children living in them, we saw just really strong response here. We're seeing, you know, the vast majority of our respondents to this questionnaire really expressing that this is still a priority.
Part I really loved about this process, and I've done this in a different role, not being at the chair of the table, but each thing that we do builds onto the next one. It's really neat. So just even that questionnaire added, gave us a piece of information. The next one that we went to added more information, kind of neat to see how it evolves.
And so that kind of sums up what we brought to council in December with the end of phase one. The other pieces of it, which I didn't go into great detail in this presentation, the other pieces of it were the technical pieces. So we took that initial program, we asked the architects on our team to break that down into how much space for different kinds of building spaces, different kinds of rooms, would that take to accommodate those things? And they came up with a rough square footage for each of those types of spaces that would be necessary to kind of build up a facility, and then a rough cost associated with that, so that we could get for the first time a shared idea of what's going to happen inside this building, not what it looks like, but what's going to happen inside this building and what that might cost, with the understanding that that's going to continue to be refined throughout the process. And at that point, we were looking at a 58,000 or so square foot building to accommodate those kinds of things. And they had a cost at the bottom line that was in the like $52 million range.
It's December.
I think it was 52, wasn't
I
it?
think it's 42, yeah.
I bet it's so many numbers.
It was either 50 or 52.
It was right in that range. So then we jumped into phase two. That's without the pool.
Now, the reason why I said that was December, as we've all known, so even if you look at the numbers of what Lake Oswego is built at, I was there through that process. Even just the start of theirs was 3 years in advance. You can see how much less it costs. Square footage is much smaller than what's being built here, but just the inflation has really taken a toll on building.
It's really been, yeah, it's been even beyond just like what most of us as consumers have been feeling in inflation. The building costs have increased year over year in kind of ridiculous ways. So what we're seeing is buildings that were started at the beginning of the pandemic cost, 2/3 of that kind of money. So it's like, it's really like big magnification. We're starting to see that mellow out, is what the architects and the cost estimators are telling us now, just for your interest.
Can I just make one comment
Absolutely.
about the slide before?
Yep.
Just because,
Yep. So yeah, this overall support.
well, I want to know how you know everyone was retired, because I'm not retired. I have no kids.
It's what
This was self-indicated.
It was self-
It's what
Yeah.
they gave
So
us.
what about like if it was people like me that are, nope, then they're not represented at all?
There was an option to indicate that you were retired and have children visiting, and there was a option to check that was retired and no children in our visiting the household. So we had separate options.
But what
there.
about if you're working and no children in the household?
Then you would be in the all respondents category. We broke these three out of that. We didn't show
Okay.
that fourth, but what we saw, where that fell out, just for reference, where that fell out is kind of in between the second row and the third row. It was basically at the same height of, so if no kids in the household essentially was at similar levels of support. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying. So in December, we brought those results, and City Council said, yes, you've met the bar that we wanted to see to go forward with phase two, which we defined at that point as further community engagement to build out a concept design for the building, which also involved obviously a design professionals. And one of the things that we were asked very explicitly was to include in that operational planning, which was one of the things that we knew we needed to do as well. We'd already started that in phase one. And to continue it. In fact, your city manager asked for a kind of additional items to make sure that we had the community engagement budget that we needed to have to really push out into the community, but specifically to also have some resources to make some little targeted presentations and asks of groups that maybe we hadn't heard from, so that to counter the point that, oh, well, this questionnaire was just the people who we already know, who are already naturally inclined towards parks and recreation. Well, as people are starting to come out of the woodwork, as they do, when the word starts generating out of this, we wanted to have some resources to go out to talk to them specifically, and we've done some of that in this phase. So above the line here is pretty much technical work, and below the line is the community engagement that parallels it. And so we've been working with the steering committee throughout, and then kind of doing series of open house, Park and Recreation Advisory Board, City Council updates to kind of keep everybody informed, the general public as well as your decision-making bodies. steering committee's been really critical in helping us refine ideas that are coming out of the technical team. And the last step of this that, besides the final city council and crowd updates, is really about polling and an online version of that poll that would be open access. So we see that as a two-step process. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but the first step of that is a probabilistic or statistically valid telephone and online multimodal poll. It is still a managed sample that we can apply the magic of statistics to understand the broader context that we can apply those results to the broader population of voters in West Linn. That's the universe that we're looking for if anybody's following all of the details. And then the other part of that would be a parallel process that would be open access to anyone, and we would advertise as widely as possible and as fast as possible. It's quick response online, be able to push it out through social and all of our contact lists. And so the reason there is that we want to have results that we can generalize to the larger population. That's that voter poll. We want to understand, would voters support the ask that we're asking of them? And the other part is we want to make sure that the 250 people who get that phone call, there'll actually be more of them, that's the number we're hoping will answer, aren't the only people that get a voice in this. And so that broad reach is about making sure that we understand, okay, more broadly, what are people saying? That isn't something that we're going to mash together, but we are going to conduct those parallel and be able to show those results in parallel.
I was just going to ask if there's any online questions at this point.
There are no online questions right now.
No, I meant.
Questions from the online audience. Thank you. I didn't even check in to see that there was an online audience. I should have guessed.
I don't have any questions.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, good, good.
We can't see you guys actively, so that's
Yeah, you'll have to pipe in and don't feel bad about interrupting. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm usually the person running the show on the back end of that, and I'm always trying to be cautious of that, but
Good call.
That's all right. Train back on.
No, that was actually good. Thank you.
so yeah, I'm gonna go through a little bit of what we did. Like I said, the steering committee really helped us refine what the technical team was putting forward. We started putting things onto a floor plan and on the site so that we can understand a little bit how things fit. That was a fun little jigsaw puzzle, and we then went out to the community with a design concept of the floor plan level. So just kind of like, where would these spaces be arrayed? How can we talk about them? What are we including? Really, this was the first time that we come back out to the broader community with the end results of phase one as well. And so we kind of presented all of that, and we actively chose to do that in an open house format at the suggestion of our steering committee, because they were wanting to make sure that people had an opportunity to spend the time with specific pieces of the information that they wanted to, have conversations both with our technical team, the various citizens and electeds that were involved in this process, and with each other. And that open house format gives you kind of the most opportunity to talk to each other. And it doesn't platform somebody who really just wants to stand up and explain why this is such a terrible idea. I'm not saying that there's a bunch of those people out there, but there are people who came to our first round of open houses who absolutely took that opportunity. We called on them and they monopolized the meeting for a little while, and they were really just, this is the worst thing I've ever heard of. And that was not the vibe or the consensus of the room, but it occupied a lot of the space in the room. And so one of the things that, again, we're building and we're learning as we go here. We're definitely learning from our steering committee all the way through, both about your community and what would work best in this community. And I would say that this is a shining example of a great group of people coming together and thinking about this in a deeper way as we go through this project. It really is a great example of why we do those steering committees. So that open house had, depending on your count, somewhere in the 40 to 70 kind of range. It's hard to keep track when you're doing the open house format, how everybody signs in. We took a lot of pictures. We even took video. I've got a great little time lapse of both open houses. But we got a lot of great input, a lot of confirmation, some really great questions, and some ideas that we were able to work into the further refinement of that concept.
I'm just gonna say that I appreciate you have actual pictures of it's on there, because as CCI, like one of our things that we do is making sure that the citizens' voice is actually being heard.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've had happen in the past with these open houses is we feel like everyone that put their comment cards and post-its just
It just goes in.
disappeared. Like, where can we see those comments? They were never in the public record at
Yeah.
all. And so we always worried that those voices weren't being.
And so we published for the purposes of the project, and I think it's going up in the next round of updates to the website, just so that people do understand that. I feel pretty strongly that my job is maintaining the trust of your community. And part of it is that transparency. It's like, and so one of the first things that we did after open house 1 was I had somebody sit down, name each board, put a picture of those post-it notes that were on that board, and transcribe all of those comments so that they were readable. And we did that. I've actually already got a draft of that for open house 2 that we had last Thursday, and it will be part of that, that mix as well. So really important to us that all of these results come out, that they are visible, and that we can facilitate making a decision, whatever that decision may be. So
The part that's neat to have them here, you can see. I think it's really, it's huge to be able to show that, not just Brian's talking.
And we knew that showing that people had actually shown up and they had actually had those conversations. We made a point to do video and to do lots of photography to make sure that we have actually capturing people's words and their presence in this conversation, and who was actually there. Because you look at the pictures of open house 1, and one of the things that people legitimately commented on was there's no young people in those pictures. And so we pushed.
But can I add one thing
Yep.
too that I thought was really neat again with the people, the volunteers who are helping the community, is that if the first round we found certain people would make a comment, but they didn't write it on sticky note. So the steering committee and parks board members would take, like, if you were to say a comment, we'd write it down and go put it on the board so that if people weren't wanting to really do it, we would help them so to get that, so it wasn't all in our brain.
We had some great,
Someone did that to me when I was there.
yeah, we had some great
Put it on a sticky note.
Yeah. I tried to really drill it into everybody's head at our opening briefing of both open houses, that if it doesn't get written down, we don't hear it. Because we talk to a lot of people in the course of those conversations, but we can't hear everybody and we can't remember everything. So we want to get it on paper so that we can transcribe it and we can make sure that it gets captured and relayed.
For the outreach for the youth, I think it's been pretty successful just to do things directly at the high school.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a consideration or.
We met with the Yackers, the Youth
Yeah.
Action Council, and
Yes.
they were, so they were gonna help get the word out. We also wanted Rory to do a video for their morning news that they have. So that's something we're still working on. Because even so, even if they're not voters, their parents would be, and just to see that this is a lot of the space that they'll be able to use year round. So getting their feedback is really important.
And then we've also reached out through parent teacher organizations at Rosemont Ridge, and they've helped us reach out to the other PTSAs and to really in the outreach mode, not so much in the information gathering mode, but in the come out to the open house, that was coming up. And so we did some of those meetings that I was talking about, those kind of like one-off, like we're going to go and make a presentation, do a little like targeted outreach at the ACC. We also had proud members and committee members at the summer market opening. This is a preview of what you will be seeing a lot more of if we continue on in the summer here, because there's lots of opportunities to talk to people over the summer months here. So it's a preview mode. Anyway, sorry, you don't get to see the Facebook ad. So open house 2.
We've seen it because a lot went out.
Yeah, so we knew we needed to do a lot of advanced outreach here. This is kind of a partial list. We were still putting this together today to kind of make sure that it goes, but just to give you a flavor of this, the project email list, as I said, has over 600 non-duplicated names on it. The recreation email list is well over 4,000. It might have been 6,000. Did I get that right?
No, 4,000 is perfect. You got it right. Yeah.
The city did all of their social posting on Facebook and everything. We also had people out in the community who had gotten excited in open house 1 that were posting, reposting, and adding things to like the community Facebook groups and things like that. The city's not directly posting in, but people who are members of that group can kind of answer questions and encourage people to come out. We ran a Facebook ad to try to get to the people that we don't know yet. And we did that in a really targeted hard push in the week before the open house to try to get the word out about that as much as possible. And in assistance, as I said, we had random community members doing that. We also made it very easy for our steering committee, the TRAB members and council members to pass along. We had simple language, simple images, make it easy for them to post, make it easy for them to pass things into their neighborhood association newsletters, their PTAs, their PTSOs, all of the things. The message there being that all of that stuff means a lot more coming from somebody who's in the community than it means coming from me or even from the official city channels. So we really worked hard to make that as simple as possible. And I'm really hopeful, although I didn't exactly do exit polling at the open house, that a lot of those people that hadn't come to open house 1 that came to open house 2 heard about it through one of those methods. So I feel really good about that turnout. I think that it was probably, I'm still trying to work out a count based on my video, but I think it was probably a good 10-15% more in raw number. And we also had a lot of families that brought their kids, took us up on our offer essentially of, we will help keep your kids entertained as you get going. We had a great group of kids there drawing ideas about what they would like to see. Some of those things made it back to us, but some of them got taken home with the kids. It's fine.
I did not think about that.
And we've captured again what we heard overall input. And I'm going to just point out a couple of things because you can't obviously read those Post-it notes, but on the left side here is a board that we were asking about funding. So this is a complicated question. We are asking a complicated thing of your community. We are being asked to see if there is support in the community to fund the building, construction of a building, as well as the operations of a building. And because there isn't there aren't resources sitting around the city budget somewhere for either of those things. So what we tried to work through with people was the very real estimate of costs, which are all very conservative at this point because there's a lot of design left to be done. But we recognized that the $65 million total cost was going to be a very large ask to just get the building built. So that was going to work out to the average assessed home being asked to pay $580 a year in additional taxes to get the building built. 520. Okay. And so what we were looking at as we absorbed those numbers, as your steering committee absorbed those numbers, was, is that too much of an ask? And what we were hearing from professionals in the polling world was smaller asks are failing. It's like, it's not saying that it's impossible. It's saying that it's going to be a challenge. And we also have to sell people on an additional ask, a much smaller ask, but an additional ask in probably a 5-year operating levy, although there are a couple of ways we could approach it. In either case, we're going to have to make an additional ask of your community for funding to operate that facility. So big and complicated. And so we needed to figure out a way to boil this down a little bit. We had Megan and I standing there all night explaining to people exactly where these costs came from, why we are telling you this cost if we don't think that you're going to say yes to $520 a year right off the bat, and help understand it. And the spectrum that we drew on the board on the left here, on the left side of it is $65 million bond. Just, we're going to fund it all out by taxes to the homeowners to build the building. On the far right side, we have a $35 million or zero or less kind of bond. And basically the premise here was, we're going to balance this between what we're going to ask individual tax-paying households to pay for and what the city is going to go out looking for additional resources or cost cuts in the program. And we're asking people, is there somewhere along this spectrum that your household would be comfortable saying yes? And what we heard actually surprised us. First off, the very first person who put their dot on the board put it all the way on the left and said, yeah, this is a deal. Honestly, like what we're getting out of this is worth it to me. That's an individual household perspective. I'm not saying that anybody was wrong, who also, the next person who came up, put it all the way on the right, didn't want to pay a cent, did not think this project was for them. But the majority of the people kind of fell in this like 40 to 45 and up range. And that was actually really informative for us. I couldn't have asked for this exercise to have come out better. It's not everybody. It's not everybody who is in the room, and it's not everybody who's in West Linn, clearly. But it gives us a little bit of indication that there is a viable project here. And what we want to do with that information is we want to ask in our poll, which we had put a hold on, We want to ask for a number that is lower than the 65 million, but not so low that we can't actually build a project. And so we want to test a level that makes sense for, that's based on something that isn't just less than 65 million. It's actually based on something. And this gives us a little bit of indication of where that line might be. So in addition, we asked people to comment on some of our ideas about ways to share the load, essentially increase the affordability of the project. And we had some ideas and we asked people to comment on them. We got some great ideas there, as well as a bunch of ideas about the overall concept and things that they would like to see and questions that they might have. There's, more of this transcription coming as well. So you'll notice distinctly that this presentation did not include a whole lot of the design. I really wanted to target this presentation to you all about what we've done both in outreach and in actual activities, and then in communicating that information back out. So it's kind of the whole cycle. It's kind of, I always try to separate in my own community engagement brain, like the actual engagements from the outreach, because if you only talk about the actual engagements and nobody shows up, doesn't do you any good. You got to get the outreach in there. And then there's the closing the loop part of it that's really about documenting and publishing and making available that information. We've been trying to do that through public meetings, as well as through the website, and as well as through these iterative open houses throughout the process to make sure that people have the information in front of them. They get that opportunity to react to it and to tell us if we got it wrong. So what's happening next, maybe immediately next, like tomorrow, is launching a poll to your voters, likely voters for the November 2024 election. There's a reason that we're targeting that. We expect there will be a high turnout in that election compared to, say, a May or an off-year election. And we think that that has some possible advantages. But really, we want to just know, and council has asked us to get them that answer before the deadline, which is the first week of July, to decide if they want to refer something to the ballot. We're going to update PRAB on May 30th. That's coming right up too. That city council meeting is June 17th. That's what we're currently scheduled for. The reason for that is to give city council as much time as we could work into the schedule for them to consider what they would do with that information. Because like I said, that first week or so of July is the last week that we can, that they can refer something to November 2024. Doesn't mean the project's dead if it doesn't go forward in November 2024. It just means some shifting of attention. So, and then we're going to do some final documentation that's going to follow that. But that is mostly about whenever we pick this design back up, we want to make sure that the team that picks that up, whether that's us or anybody else, has all of the notes and the fresh knowledge that we've gathered throughout this process. And so it's really about that closing the loop stage again.
In addition to that, the part that's been really great is if this does move forward, there's groups of citizens who want to help get the word out and educate and get people to want to vote. And so it will be, we're using the word as a toolkit that'll be available with the renderings, with the information. So citizens who are interested in helping support that, where there is a group that wants to go forward with helping, if we have a gap of 20 million, they want to go see if they can help find funding, which is just phenomenal. If they feel that there's really great need of community that this facility could offer. And so as part of the end wrap of what Ryan's team will be working on, that we'll be able to have that ready in case we move forward. If not, then it's there for whatever we move forward to.
So the next set of polling, are you going to be polling similarly to the survey that have the cost? Because I think everybody says, well, I want this.
Part of the reason,
That's why you got the good response, because no one knew what it was going to cost.
Yeah.
But then every time we've done this before in the past, people see the cost.
and that's what we're really at here is, as Megan said, this is the first stage that we've had those costs
Showed the cost.
in play.
Yeah.
No, I know.
And so the poll,
I was one of those that
Yeah.
said, I'm all for this.
Yeah, this sounds great.
And I'm like, I'm not.
I'm
for
not
it.
sure that I'm for this.
Oh, that's a free grab too.
And so the poll is intended to replicate what you would see at the ballot as much as possible. So it will talk about these specific costs to the homeowner, based on cost per thousand, based on the average assessed value, based on monthly and yearly costs. What we want to make sure is that we don't just throw out a number that's on the far end of the spectrum that we maybe already know is the non-starter, because that doesn't give us any more information than what we have. So we want to start a little further back with our costs and go from there.
And I was actually okay with the bond cost. My actual problem is with the
Extra
continued cost.
ongoing
Because
operation.
when, I mean, this was why I was always against a pool, is because every time we've had a consultant come to the city and present to the city council, that, you know, pools are money losers, you know, so, and, like, we don't have any extra cash in. And this is the problem that I think that the citizenry of West Linn doesn't understand how different our city, because they'll say, you know, we'll say the cities of the same size have a pool. But if you look at those cities, they also are 30–40% commercial. We have so little commercial that we don't have those extra tax dollars to fund anything. And people don't understand that not having any business districts is the reason why we can't have a pool. They just
Can't have nice-
city of this size.
We can't have nice things. We just have to decide on it.
The math that goes involved.
Well,
So, yeah, so that's my thing is
appreciate
that
that.
I thought it was going to be closer to breaking even without a pool.
So I would say a couple of things on that, but I want to recognize, Charlie, I saw your hand go up there, so I want to feel free to come off mute, but I want to just answer one thing, which is we started with a slightly higher cost recovery overall. We had a slightly lower cost budget, and in review overall, our concern was that we did not allow for the reality that your current Parks and Recreation Department is running on a shoestring, and this is a facility that would require full coverage over 400 hours a week or whatever.
100 hours a week.
100 hours a week of operation, you know, and like, so it's a different magnitude, and we wanted to make sure that we did not promise something. Again, all of these numbers want to be conservative at this stage in the process, and we did not want to promise something like 75% cost recovery or something like that if that was not going to be the reality. So I appreciate that is, you know, that is the situation. You're reading it right. I'm not criticizing any of that. It's like, it is, and it is even, it's the costs were higher than we originally anticipated, in part because we all had a very kind of like, let's be real kind of conversation about this. And Megan did a lot of work with the staff here about what it would actually cost for those staff positions. So I want to go back to the online audience here and make sure that we don't have any other lingering questions on that or the community engagement piece.
I think that my question was answered. I was wondering if those numbers included the pool or not, and it sounds like it probably does.
No, nothing in what we've been describing. I mean, this is where things get confusing, is that we talk about phase 1 of this project and phase 2 of this project. We talk about phase 1 of this building and potential phase 2 of this building. It's a different thing, but all of the costs that we reported to the community, all the costs that we've been talking about here are for a building that has 2 gyms, a large community gathering space, fitness area, weights, all those kind of things, but no pool. Designed to add a pool, but does not include the pool. And the operations costs do not include the pool, and they make that number look considerably worse.
So
Yeah.
I think you had that in your slide for everybody, and what, it was like 56 or something percent
For the cost recovery, yes.
cost recovering.
In our current model, it's sitting right about 56%.
So the part that doesn't show, so when we first started, and again, I was part of Lake Oswego's that process all the way up until I left there. The part that is a little bit different if you were to look at numbers from Ella versus what we have. So this is again part of that community outreach part. People don't understand that our recreation department, besides myself, is 2 full-time people, and then 3 part-time people that run programming here, and 2 part-time people that run the adult community center. That's all we have. So when this idea of this project came up and I started, the initial idea was that you would start with a whole new recreation facility with a whole new staff, which is 7 FTE plus a whole bunch of part-time, because you're open for 100 hours a week. Sometimes you're open up until, and all of this information will come out here shortly, but like you'll open up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you may be open until 10 o'clock at night. And then on the weekends, it may close at 6 because of just that you don't get routinely, they're saying after COVID, you're not getting people coming in for drop-in for weightlifting, but you can potentially rent that out. So when I started looking at that with our staff, then the cost became really elevated, and I then took all of our staff and put us in there. And then I looked at, oh my gosh, we still do all the events. We do a huge amount of support for our volunteers. We run the adult community center, we could be doing so much more there. we couldn't take everybody and flop them over to there, even because that would be essentially our headquarters, right? So all the other programming we do would still be housed out of there and be flushed out, just like we're doing elsewhere. But I couldn't shortchange all of those other things that are the greater community for just, and I don't mean to say just the rec center, but you know what I mean? So that started bumping up our costs. Now the thing, since I've been here, I haven't had a chance to do a full cost recovery on the programs we're doing. So like the revenue that we make currently in our department would partially be going over there, and that's not part of this analysis, right? This is kind of still a very high level. And so if we move forward, that gets fine tuned, and you might see that number. I would anticipate that number would reduce over time, and also in programming, outreach will be higher. We'll be able to program more with just 2 part-time people. They do a phenomenal thing at the adult community center with the programming they do. We can actually do more. We don't have enough staff to do more. So that's where I was really thankful that John, city manager, Ryan, who was already on the project when I got here, we're being fully honest about this. You know, there's nothing that I don't want to fail it as it comes, and I don't want our staff to get burnt out more than we are. And so I've been really thankful to be brought in this project at this time to have that clear messaging, because then it's all transparent of what it really is, but it's still an elevated cost because of contingency for the building and because you don't have those fine-tuned numbers yet. So
I have one question about that. I have another question too. What's PRAB?
Sorry, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Advisory board. So I thought it was Parks and Rec. I was like, oh, it's PRD. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So the
Proud.
advisory
Have
board.
one of us for
Yes,
parks.
got it. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then about this, what you're talking about,
Yeah.
is it safe to say then, that the Parks and Rec department would be growing by at least,
I think it's about
Two.
6.5 FTE that would be added in to
Okay.
incorporate all of that.
so,
It is, yeah, and
Yeah,
that doesn't
7.
include any outside maintenance or anything. The part that also includes, you have, like, I don't know if you know, we have one building maintenance person for all of the facilities in the
I do,
city.
yeah.
And so you'd have another building maintenance there and another part-time suit adds, again, that's the thing that's hard to explain. It's for the rec center. When you think about our optimizing and what we do, there's a lot of that comes along with it.
So, one of the other things, on here is, on FAQ and everything, and just what I'm seeing, it's like very much saying like free for everyone. It's not even specifying like West Linn resident or not,
Right.
which, I mean, I get that's really generous, that's nice.
Oh, there is cost for
I
non-residents
thought
too.
there was cost for non-resident, okay, so I think having some clarifying words around that, because it's like, it doesn't say everyone, like everyone's welcome, it doesn't like, it's not.
So
Oh,
So-
that's actually, that's a
Like
good
that.
nuance. So we've been working a couple of different messages around that, and I think that we're still dialing that in. But the latest version of that really is that there are a lot of different ways that you can access this facility, some of which are completely free to anyone walking in the building.
Yeah.
You can come in, you can enjoy the art, you can come and lounge, you can enjoy it as an extension of the park. You can do all of these things without paying a single dollar. You can do that if you're coming from West Linn or from Lake Oswego or from Portland. Then if you want to go and work out, you would either pay a drop-in fee for the day, or you might pay a monthly or a yearly membership. If you wanted to come in,
Resident versus non-resident.
yes, and those costs would have a 25% add for non-residents.
Okay.
That's pretty standard across facilities across the region and across the industry as a markup. Then if you wanted to go and play basketball, well, then it depends. Are you coming to play basketball as part of the league? They probably already paid their space. You've paid your league fee. It's all rolled in. You walk in, you're there. There's other things too that you might want to come and do that are rentals. You know, I want to rent some space to have my quinceanera in this beautiful new facility. Great. We have rental fees just of schedule, just like you have for any of the other facilities in the city. The other thing though is city programming. So we talked a little bit about how this opens up the possibility for city programming. That could be sports leagues. That could also be that the city decides they're going to run Friday night open gym and anybody can come in for free. That's a programming decision that will have to be made down the road. But there might also be after school activities that are just kind of programmed on the fly for middle school kids coming down from Rosemont Ridge they can come in, they don't have to be members, they don't have to pay anything, they can just come and do those things because they're part of the programming mix that the city has created. So there is there's an element of this that we've been hearing, that we need this to be available for everybody, and we need it to be as accessible and as low cost for people to access in some way in order to have that support across the entire community. And so that's part of the program decisions that we've made overall in space, is that we want to have a lot of space that is available for people to walk in for free. And we also want to have spaces that are going to help support the operations of that building. So
That's why it's community recreation center. That's why we've been really kind of explaining that's
Yeah.
it's two pieces, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds on the definition of everyone.
For everyone.
What I'm trying to focus on right now is just if there's been any breakdown of these possible revenue streams.
yeah, so we have a
talked about rentals, we talked about the different memberships and what that means, like on, an easy, like, let's just say a subscription-based service, you can see it across the board, right?
Yeah.
So do we have an idea
Yeah.
and mark down of that?
We have a detailed operational plan that was prepared by really the foremost expert in recreation center operations in the country, that goes through and models the average year over that first 5 years. And he's explained to us that what that average year really amounts to is like year 2. Year 1, you're still ramping up. Year 2, you kind of peak and get into that average, and then it starts to kind of mellow out. It doesn't, the kind of ascendancy peaks. And they've modeled that out over the long term to include replacement costs for some of the systems, not all building systems. I like to clarify that for anybody who's really specific about their HVAC. But all of the programming costs, all of the membership incomes and rental incomes, and that's all based on a conservative estimate of what we think, based on similar facilities both in this region and across the country, actually do in terms of programming and things. The specifics for West Linn, once you actually have a building, you're actually programming it, will vary a little bit, but Ken Ballard, who's our operations consultant, is on the team, is known for having these plans essentially end up overachieving. So they end up doing better than he originally estimated. And he's run facilities that vary from very small to very similar, right up to, his firm was operating for a time the Kroc Center down in Salem, which is a much bigger facility with a whole lot more variables, and really basically knows his game. So yeah, it's modeled out in quite a bit of detail, and we can share that with you if that's an interest. It's one of those spreadsheets that people get lost in very quickly, and so we've been trying to figure out. We've been showing the numbers of like the revenues that model ends up with, the expenses that model ends up with, and the balance. So that's been the messaging so far, has been that kind of we've done this modeling, these are the outcomes.
And that number is
That 54% cost recovery.
right, but it's also numbers for 2027 when the facility would open.
Mhm.
So when you see that cost, it has that inflation for cost of, like, so for example,
Staffing costs, and
Exactly.
materials costs.
right, so looking at our FT and our current union structure of pay, wages and insurance and all that, that's been included in it. Also looking at what minimum wage, it will be probably 17, I think it was 17.50 by that time. We know that we can't get staff for that amount of money. Like our seasonals right now, we're paying 19 to 20 to 23, depending, we just can't get people. So you don't want to start at the low end because that makes the number great. You got to say, no, it's probably a minimum of $19 an hour that we're able to pay.
So you
Yes,
want
somebody
the
help.
least lowest kind of person working.
We don't
for
get
you?
anybody. No, no.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
Not even that, yeah.
We don't actually get anybody. That's, I mean, so I up the ante of what we've had, but it's,
Yeah,
though
I
you want to
understand.
get,
Yeah.
so it is very interesting that, yeah.
I think, there's a lot, obviously, Megan and I have a lot of details around
Spend a
our
lot of time
heads about
together.
this. One of the things that I just want to emphasize is that the messaging here is that we are trying to be as blunt and honest about this as possible. We are not trying to spin these numbers in a way that will look more palatable. We're trying to be very realistic, and we're trying to be very clear with the community that that's what we were doing.
So yes, I would find value and interest as a citizen and speak of what.
You want the spreadsheet.
Well, I feel like there's numbers that we were gonna want. I'm trying to work with Brian on staging that information. So we just gave the numbers out. And so trying to figure out if you're asking that question, somebody else is, and what makes sense to show the public so they can understand it.
Yeah.
Because when we were even making the board, I think you were at the open house, right? When you were looking at those boards, if Brian and I weren't there, we're trying to make it so if somebody walks up, they can have a clear understanding of what it means, and with their own interpretation. We can't control that, but try to our best ability to be able to paint the correct picture.
I think you guys did a good job on.
So that's
Yeah.
one thing we're really.
It's just a little bit harder when we don't have us
So like,
to be there to correct the little, like, oh, I didn't understand that assessed value is not what I paid for my house or whatever, you know? Yeah, well, a lot of people don't understand that.
I'm like, how do you not know that?
I think that's what we're wanting to do, is get that information. That's why when I said, when he came out, I was like, oh, the website is fine. There's just a lot of information we have now that has been fully out there. At first going to the steering committee, then going to the parks board, going to the public, that I'm excited to get all of that on there. So people, if they didn't get to come or if they had lingering questions, they can find the basis of the information there. And so,
I just wanted to throw one more thing into the mix, and I know we're over time.
well,
We're gonna throw all.
I also had I have the 3 boards, but I also brought the, I know, I wanted to, actually, they have so much.
No, and I
You
put,
need to
the rendering, no, I put the renderings into that presentation too, so they're in there as well, but, just on the community engagement side, just really explicitly, like, the city did a lot of asking out in the community, repetitive messaging in any channel that we can find, documenting it. That Facebook ad that we ran in the week prior, I just, like, as I was rolling in here, got the numbers on it. Over 192,000 impressions, which is a very specific term in Facebook land, but their estimate is that 65,000 people, unique users, saw this social media ad, and they had a click-through rate of almost 3,500 clicks, which is more than double the industry average click-through rate. So we feel like, so that was an experiment, because the city, at least in Parks and Recreation, has not done any like purchased media beyond just little tiny ad boosts and things like that. And so this was about a $2,000 ask, I think.
Yeah,
And we had a media buyer buy an ad, run it for us. It had professional copy and graphics as part of it, which is a little more than that. That 2,000 was just to buy and place the ad. But I wanted to get that in the conversation here, because I know there are other projects live, because I know this because some of them are being run in my office. And there are other projects live that are doing a lot of outreach, and those questions come up. And if the director is uncertain, or the person running that project is uncertain whether that is valuable or not, it is useful to have this kind of output. I have a full report that Megan will have in the morning. And I just wanted you all to know that that existed, so that if you are getting, either you're thinking about asking and people are like, well, I don't know how valuable that would be, this can give you some metrics to actually work with on that front. And we wanted to make sure that you all got that information, because this was an experiment, and we're really pushing different ways to kind of get out in the community. And I would say that the value in that is mostly about getting beyond the people we already know. That's the hardest part of community outreach through existing channels, is that your existing channels are built on the people who already know you.
And honestly, I mean, silence is compliance, right? So most people are gonna assume that you're doing a really good job. This is going in a good direction, and they aren't saying anything because there's nothing to say.
It's going to get a lot harder for people to come and say they didn't hear anything about this project. That's kind of what we're. Oh, we heard it. We'll hear it. We'll hear it in June too. But it's.
In projects, I knocked on
Yep.
every single business owner's door and left them a flyer, and we still said they.
So are the boards that you brought?
Yeah, well, just that they are, and I just had those in there too, but just again, remember why we're here. So there was 2 articles in the Westland Tidings, which was great. Last week we ended up putting, I think it was 6 different boards out in parks to just remind people that here's a QR code and here to make sure to come. We're pulling those hopefully today, and we'll do it again when the survey goes out. Our steering committee and parks board members are taking the information. Have just started though, but they're going to their HOAs because we can't get everywhere. I think this month, I think I have 5 meetings with Ryan together, our dog and pony show. But I was really excited that people are wanting to go out and share the information. And then the sustainability president came to meet with us to talk about some of the initiatives that he was taking back to the sustainability advisory board. And then the other one, the neighborhood president's VP, Robert Jester, we met with him just recently. He's going to help get that out to all the neighborhoods through the, that president's group. And so it'll help just continue to spin that information. And again, it's taking that synergy that's there and continuing to move forward with whatever council has us do, or if it just continues to roll on its own. So and I started tracking it today because you were coming, and I'm like, but it was really, we had over 16 social media posts on top of what Ryan has done. Most of that's done in-house. We only have a half-time. The person who does our social media, she also manages all of our events and just sponsorship. So when we can get something out, that's why there's delays. She's working really hard to get that stuff.
Bill, you're doing a good job. I think the only thing, I don't know if anybody else has anything that they want to make sure that the public actually knows about would be, you have all the costs, maybe a FAQ if you're going to go do a ballot thing, but all the costs, but also because I think there's this perception that if you build it, it's going to be free. And so that there isn't going to be both the extra cost for maintenance and then extra cost to actually go into the facility and use it.
Yeah.
So it's not. I have the FAQ that shows all that too, but it's getting that message out.
Yeah,
that message out first,
right? I think there's this perception that it's just going to be the bond. And that's it, and pay the $400 for the year, and I get to use this recreation.
I really do think that what you're getting at here is very much the complexity of this ask, that it's capital and that it's operating, and then there is a membership, and we've talked a lot through this process of like, well, what if we passed the bond but didn't pass the operating money? What if we passed the operating money and didn't pass the bond? It's like, that's an easier solution, but it feels like it needs to be a pairing. And I just know that there was a chat message that Charlie had to do, so I'm just letting people know that we're down one more.
So that is something we've been trying to work through this whole time to make sure it's clear and understandable too. And so I think that's where I'm really excited to get some stuff on the website and taking this feedback. Like again, every step has kind of improved it or fine-tuned it more. And so even just being here tonight, we'll take this information and do another roll into how this continues.
And now we finally have beautiful pictures to show.
That look really amazing.
I mean, yeah. Well, and I think that's the one thing, if you could ask, I realized I had to define, I realized everybody's definition of even just recreation is different. Of how it's like, how would you use this space as your community space? Like, I would want to go meet you down for coffee over there. Just because there's a coffee cart and it's beautiful to hang out. You can walk around. There's places that are covered. Like how we call the middle.
Sit in there and watch it rain.
Right. Well, really, and we call an area of the living room area because people want to just come. Like I have a middle school at Rosemont, but I live down in the Robinwood neighborhood. My kiddo can come to me, but if they wanted to go walk with their friends, and I'm working at a meeting, there's no landing place. The rec center could be that landing place for them, and I pick them up. My husband can. So it's just kind of interesting of how you see this space. There's community, there's rec, health and wellness all around it, and then how fabulous would it be if we had a concert like we do? We actually have parking, so the neighborhood wouldn't be impacted as much. We adjust our recreation programming so that we don't overprogram that night. There's no extra restrooms. But,
and accessible parking and pathways to that concert. It's like right now you're dealing with a gravel lot with no pathways into it, and there's a lot of additional benefits to that park that we talked a lot about with people, and people have really brought forward that they just keep saying, it would be a really great thing for that park. There's a little bit of plus and minus for the people who live immediately adjacent, which we definitely want to recognize.
Absolutely.
I've heard both things, and I want to be clear about that it would be awesome, and also that it could be challenging at times, especially construction. So I think that there's room to acknowledge all of those things. And as I keep saying, and you heard echoed a little bit, this community can have nice things if they want to. This is not an ask beyond the community's means, but it is a choice. And we want to present that choice in as clear a way as possible. And so I really appreciate all of your input and continued push on like clarifying this message or helping to get this piece around, and we're open certainly to feedback about, oh, we're hearing, like as a city, we're not doing a great job of getting into these channels, or we're not getting a good job of getting these people to speak before the projects get too far along. Those kinds of things. I'm kind of assuming what your mandate is based on your title, but
This is really good
Yeah.
transparency and, it's been great. Seen it.
excellent, excellent.
So, I moved here in 2000, and this is, I think, the third time this has come up since I lived here.
I think you're right.
So there's another time the pots when it came up as well. And I remember pots that were significantly less.
I'm sorry, it would have been nice.
I keep telling people that 2013 bond that the voters failed at 75%, no, would have been a screaming deal. It would have been a screaming
It was a
deal.
bit earlier, too,
Yeah.
and it was,
The city has
I
shifted
remember
more,
20
she's a lot more families.
Yeah,
than it
I
used
think
to
I don't remember exactly. I guess the point was, there were discussions at the time, and the pool was the big issue because the operation of the pool was the bigger factor than the thing. So that was an issue. Another thing that came up is that having a subscription or a membership fee and forces people to decide, do I give up my membership at my club or whatever gym that I'm already going to, both at the same time? What is the capacity for this new facility to handle all of the people? And those were big questions at the time.
That's an interesting one to bring up. I actually heard, I had somebody ask me at the open house if this facility, I think they were specifically talking about the weight room also, had the capacity for everybody essentially in West Linn. And I said, ultimately the challenge that we see in other facilities is not overcrowding in most situations. It's the other side. It's not generating the revenue that it needs to, or whatever. But the other point that I hear in the edges of that, maybe it's explicitly, is the competition aspect of, there are other businesses here in the community that are offering similar kinds of services. And what I will say is that in every community that I've worked in, and I've spent 17 or so years as a park and recreation planner all across the country, it has not drawn down those club memberships. Like it is not driven out of existence those private facilities that already exist. It is a concern that is often voiced, and I have yet to hear it actually be realized in a way that can be pointed to, like, oh, well, when that facility opened, our costs went down, or our revenues went down 30%, we had to close. Most of those facilities, if they're running in any kind of reasonable efficiency, are actually like running, they're running waiting lists, and they're running, if they're in good quality, and they're I mean, I don't think that your public facility is going to run the day club out of business, is what I'm saying. In short, it's like, will there be choices made in the community about, I'm going to choose to subscribe in one place versus another? Yes. Will that have happened if 24-hour fitness opened or a new yoga fitness studio opened? Yes. It's going to be an evolving situation. But I have not seen that kind of comparison or that kind of concern live out when I've come into facilities or come into communities that have recently built new big facilities. Even very fancy ones. One of our colleagues, actually, she worked on one of the earlier steps in this process, was helping to run one of the very fanciest kind of newish facilities in Texas, absurdly big, and they still had enough market. I mean, it was just like there's so much market out there that it takes a lot to oversaturate it at public rates. There's a certain audience for
When
everything.
you consider the price, though, just the price point alone, and part of the Ken Ballard, the analysis of the city, we actually have a report of all the, I guess you would say competition, but it's not really competition. It's a different type of workout facilities that are near us. When you just look at the price point, you can't even get close to comparing. But then those who are going to, like, I was a Orange Theory person, or if you're going over here, you have a different vibe of what you're looking for. So I think it's just having that expertise to know those are questions, like when people ask, it's good to know what the answer is. Yeah, and that capacity one always does come up. We were at Hillsborough, went and toured Hidden Creek, that this facility that's very similar to the one that's being thought of, dreamed of over here. The parking lot was full and it felt comfortable inside. Like there was plenty of workout spaces. It didn't feel busy, but there was, pickleball going in one part of the gym, and there was kids drop and play with, their adults on the other side of the gym. There's people out, there was a yoga class going on. I mean, it was just people hanging out and taking meetings in the lounge spaces. So it was really, didn't feel like your typical gym that you'd walk into or a workout facility. It felt really like comfortable. I could just come there without wanting to work out, and I just want to be there. It kind of got us, everybody dreaming of what the possibility is, and even more than just that back part, that community place of being. It's pretty exciting. But I have Brian's heard me say this so many times. I have my Parks and Rec hat that go, yes, I want it. And there's a business side that has to pencil out. So it's like you got both sides, and that's what this process is. And I've been really grateful. We started with, our answer to council was originally was supposed to be, are we going to vote in November, yes or no? We found through this process that there's more questions to be answered, and we'll present it and then have council make that decision of what the next steps are. So I've been really grateful to be coming in at this time with the team that we have and council we have, and to be supportive to let us be really open and honest with it.
So just so you know too, I think on June 17th, City Council are having a joint.
Oh, it's a very long meeting.
Yeah.
We've been to the 11 o'clock.
We've done the marathon meeting.
We've done that.
We'll manage. But I appreciate that.
We tried to go before it, but our polling wouldn't be done. It wouldn't be done enough to be able to present what we had. And then if we go the week later, it was another problem that we weren't giving that council enough time to make some decisions and research. So no, we're in for the long haul that day. Yes, we'll see you there. We didn't go until 9:30. I think last time we presented at council. 9:30, right? Yeah, is when we started.
It was late.
So the timing of it's all unfortunate. It's all based on that bond date that we have to go to the bond June or July 10th is where everything has to be submitted. So we'll be the fluffy part of the conversation.
Which one meeting that discussed starting early?
I think it was, John told me it was the meeting, the meeting.
It's not
before.
that. Oh, okay.
But if you can make that happen.
We won't argue it.
All right, are there any other questions online or anything? Good.
Thank you,
All
everybody.
right, thank you guys.
Really
Really
appreciate
good job.
it.
Do you want to finish the other
Oh,
stuff?
yeah, we're gonna finish it.
I'll just leave the rendering, and that's not all the renderings, that is boards, and you can just,
Okay.
I don't know if anybody could make it, it's not all of them, so much more fun to double check. Yeah, exactly. And then you guys can look at them more, but here's the one side from the parking lot. I really wish I had the other one, but it's really just a fun, neat space. There's potential room for food carts, extra seating on the outside, and there's the covered area. I don't know if you can see that very well with my angle. But I'll just leave that here for you to look at, but we've got, I think, 9 other renderings that'll be fun to show, and that'll be stuff that we'll get up for people to really. And then the program layout as well, so you can take a look at what the spaces are defined as. And so the orange is all of the active recreation pieces, and all of the red are the community pieces, or where we can do additional programs besides rec. So it's really fun. And this light yellow is this living room space where you can come here, walk throughout, and go into in the park.
Or come in from the park to use the
Come in for-
restroom, or
yeah.
to check in on something, or to sit when it rains.
So you get right, exactly. And this is the second story. That's for you to look at. You want to produce it. I'll grab it for-
That's actually a great spot for, well, there's restrooms at the workout thing, but sometimes that's locked.
Yeah, yes, because they close at a certain time and
Yeah.
only open on a certain time.
Yeah.
Yes. And well, and also we'll be able to activate that space better, because right now there's nobody there. We have to program it. So looking to do that, but that's another synergy if you have this here. So this is the way the site plan, just so you can take a look at it.
And the area that I want to point out, yes, exactly. This is the area that we've reserved in our thinking for Future Aquatic Center. We have another version of this site plan that shows just a very loose idea that shows that it can in fact fit both a lap pool and a leisure pool in that space, and it would extend off of that hallway by the gym. Basically just is all designed to be expanded that direction. So we've been designing with that in mind. Like I said, this building becomes the first step to a future building it's the answer to all of your pool needs, right?
Well, one thing, if you haven't gone through this process before, maybe you have, is people have asked, well, is this the final design? They'll see a picture like, oh, you've already made the decision. It's like, no, we had to figure out how to get to a cost. You have to build a building. So this is the ideal situation that was given by the steering committee and taking the architect's knowledge of how you configure it. So like, these are the locker rooms right now. But if you add a pool, then you just extend your locker rooms to have enough for the pool. But the interesting part is the steering committee already kind of set the design that way, not even knowing how those pieces work. The way this is set right here, this reception area at the end of the night, you only have to have 1 or 2 people in the building because this is the paid section and you can see both ways in and out. So some of those programming details help us optimize our staffing as well. Anyway, I know it's not why we're here. I need to let Brian go home because I have Brian so many different meetings in the next few weeks. So I'll leave this there in case you are interested.
Oh, somebody has a question.
Ollie, go ahead.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to say I think you guys did a really, really good job of involving the community in this process as far as what people are interested in and everything so far. I just would encourage from a community member perspective that level of transparency with finances as far as taxes, 5-year operating levy, memberships, that people, as much, work that has gone into the benefits, which are great, and possibilities, that the community also knows the cost to them per household individually, because I think those two definitely go hand in hand, and just that people should have that level of knowledge when they go into voting on it.
One of the things we're playing with right now, and we did at the open house kind of on request, is actually running people's actual assessed value instead of the average assessed value for them in real time, so that they can convert these numbers from the kind of conceptual, if I have the average assessed value home in West Linn, to the actual, like, this is what the difference on my tax bill might look like. And that actually encouraged a lot of people because they were doing the math in their head based on their purchase price or whatever else. And I do agree that transparency throughout is like, it's what we were asked to do here. And I've taken that pretty seriously. I think when we've come up in front of council, we've been, verging on blunt about these topics. And I think that it's ultimately that's what I think your community is responding well to. It's just like, let's just lay it out there and let's see what comes. But the cost is definitely the newest piece, as we talked about today. It's like, we're still figuring out the ways, because there's a lot of variability still in that cost, and it's hard to explain that in a short 1-sentence word. It's like, well, what do you mean? Is it going to be is it going to be 55 or 65 million? It's like, well, it's probably going to be somewhere in between there. It's like, it's a little bit hard, but what does probably mean? Well, it depends on a whole lot of things. I hear you, and I think that's a really, I've been hearing that all the way through this process as well. Is it's like, it won't be real input until people are looking at the whole picture, and that's where we're finally at for this concept. And as Megan was saying, it's a concept. It's not the final design. We needed to get enough structure around it that we could get to even this much of a cost, rather than saying, well, it's going to be somewhere between $50 and $100 million. That wouldn't have been very helpful to us. So,
well, and I think, Holly, too, the part that I love, and you guys have all kind of echoed this, is it's ironic that even on Monday, as we were getting final costs, we were having to shift some of our questioning and what we were asking the public for Thursday. So on this short timeline, now that the public has seen this, we're going to be updating the Parks Advisory Board on Thursday. Our goal is to, how do we get this information into a tangible thing that can be online, available for people to find, and how to, that's what we're doing right now, because we want that out there. So we want people to be informed. And the people who are out who want to help advocate for it need that too. So that's kind of what we're actually working on. Trying to get your polling right now and get the questionnaire going, and then moving on to that. So, but I think that's the commitment you'll get from us to however we can get it out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate you all asking to talk with us. It's
really
great to run through this, and we really appreciate, particularly those of you who have made the effort to come out and see this in real time and hear how we're presenting stuff, so that we can kind of fact check ourselves, you know, a little bit about whether we're doing a good job. And I'm really glad to hear that things feel good from the other side of the conversation. So, so thanks again for the time.
Thank you for the extra time too.
Well, we have a light schedule. too.
Okay, well, I'm glad.
Sounds like it'll make the cost go.
Okay, so next on the agenda is CCI announcements. Does anybody have anything? The only thing I want you guys to think about maybe for next meeting is what we want to do. We talked about writing a letter to council to kind of get a consultant to do that Hillsborough thing where they have to follow a procedure with every single thing.
Citizen outreach.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that
So-
for the Misty thing that we looked at?
Well, it was just for overall, any planning project would have to go through this formalized step-by-step process versus right now, only the big projects have to have the outreach that they have.
Okay.
It's like a guideline.
It's like a guideline,
Okay.
so,
Maybe,
so we were gonna, it obviously would require a consultant to create the project that the Hillsborough one. So if you have a chance, look at that Hillsborough one. I think it's in the other meetings.
Okay.
Darren had linked it in. But basically, we would have to ask council to send a letter to council. So maybe we'll discuss that next month on writing. But next month, we'll write that letter to council and figure out. I think it's a good idea.
well, I haven't seen anything posted about Elena. I got a message. I'm just curious if there's like, I don't know if that's a counselor. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to be shared that is public at this point.
Sorry, are we talking about an employee? What's the question?
Elena, I guess, I don't know if she's, I'm just wondering if there's anything like that would impact for citizens, like a work that she's done that should be made where.
Is it going to be a position that is rehired or is it?
I think that would be a good question for department heads,
Okay.
Yeah,
not
probably.
me.
I don't know, I'm looking at you. both
That's
guys.
fine.
Yeah, sorry.
I think I can maybe answer that. I don't think immediately there's a plan to fill the position. But I know there is discussions to see how we're going to fill that or what between departments, how that role is going to fit in the
Might
future.
change a little bit.
It might, yeah, with Elena's, for everybody that's listening, Elena is the economic development, forget her, exactly.
As business support specialist.
Business support specialist, that sounds right.
That's right, that's,
Yeah,
it's because like it comes up a conversation like what we're actually doing with economic development.
Yeah, she's on, we used to both be in
Yeah.
economic development too, so I think more from that perspective is the economic development committee still gonna exist?
And to,
And
you're saying like, is it economic development or is it business support? Right, because like those are two very different things that we would always kind of discuss in the meeting, so.
was Elena a part of these meetings?
No, I
typically?
think this I think is just, he's just asking in here, but we both
Okay.
were on economic.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's
Okay.
anything that the community needs to be aware of, or if there's any plans to involve the community. I'm not sure.
Within like a new hire, you mean,
Or
or?
hire, or
Yeah.
even
in the
like
positions.
any current, any current plans are being folded, like.
Not immediately, we just received her notice last week, so I think there's just sort of talk of tying up any loose ends, having her sort of give us
Okay,
what she's been working on.
okay,
And then from there, we'll decide where that position kind of fits in to the city. I don't think immediately there's a plan to fill it next week or even next month, really.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a second to post a job and and everything. But I know that we are sort of having discussions as to where that position fits in the future.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, not to put you guys on the spot.
No, it's fine.
We're not gonna see each other.
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
so.
Yeah.
and the only relevance I think it has for this committee is just so you know, the economic development under her was just being canceled every single week. And so there was some fear that the Economic Development Committee basically was becoming defunct. And so I don't think that as us, as the CCI, we'd like to see all of those CAGs being active and doing work and involving them in the city.
Yeah.
So to have those meetings continually canceled and basically decide that they weren't important and they didn't need to meet, and that was, I think, the concern that EDC had, and that would be my concern on this board, is that with her position going away, we would hope that the Economic Development Committee continues to do some work. It's an important CAG.
Okay, now is there a staff she's the staff liaison for the Economic Development Committee. So
Chris will be Chris Meyer.
If Chris could come back as that would be great.
So what I was gonna say is I think sort of first step for the staff here would be to identify a new liaison, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
And then once we figure out with Elena's position, what we're gonna do, then sort of backfill it from there. But it sounds like Chris would be a good candidate. I may be a good candidate, but I know Elena has worked. I'm a planner and I work with Chris and I work with Darren. So, and we've worked with Elena, and she's kind of kept us abreast of what she's doing. So it would be best if somebody from our department was probably the liaison, in the temporarily speaking, and then
Chris was the
that'll be part-
liaison, but first, that's why I think that was.
Chris may do it. I'm the new person, so they may sort of, give it to me. So that's fine. But yeah, it's, that would probably be the first, order for us to figure out the new liaison for the committee. And I'll make sure that's definitely a topic that we talk about, because I know her last week is this week.
That would be my own.
Okay.
All right, and do you have any announcements for us there? Wanted to do this?
I guess one announcement is, let's see, it's next Saturday, which I believe is June 8th. At Robinwood Station, there's going to be an open house for the Vision 43 project, which is essentially a rethinking and probably some rezoning along Willamette Drive, Highway 43. So this is an open house, very similar to what we were discussing here today with the rec center. There'll be poster boards and post-it notes and going around and giving feedback as to their plan there. So that everyone from the public is welcome. We want everyone there to come give us feedback, just as you were seeing today in the presentation. We'll have something similar that will come of that. So June 8th at Robinwood Station. If anybody, please spread the word.
Is that a midday?
I think it's at 1 p.m., I believe. Yeah,
Is that like a Sunday or something?
it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Saturday after this.
And that's on the city website. It'll be posted. It's on the main page as far as community events. So that's it. That's from me.
Right. Okay, yeah, no other business. I will adjourn this a little bit late at 7:40, but thank you, everybody, for your feedback and that we got good information.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Next time.
All.
Bye.